1600 or heritagehomecraft.com.
What is it, Hockey?
Yeah, what's he chiming in about?
There's an international fugitive and he's out of his own country? What are you gesturing at? We can go get him and we can get the bounty? Who do we deliver him to? The DEA, you say? He sounds like a bad dude, like Corn Pop or something. AM 770 KTTH. Sorry about this, but there's breaking news, and when I'm not spewing my hot takes all over the place, I'm out seeking international desperados, and in this case, let's see, information linked to the arrest. This is a international narco-terrorist. Sounds like a bad guy. Sounds like the conduit for fentanyl coming from China to Caracas, which is the capital of Venezuela, you don't say. Venezuela? But wait, aren't we turning people away at the border? Aren't we Title 42ing everybody but Venezuelans? Or I'm sorry, everybody, no one but Venezuela. So people fleeing a narco-terrorist state are getting turned away at the border. That's outrageous. What's wrong with us? But why'd we do that? Oh, because... Well, what's that, Hockey? Because the government of Venezuela asked us not to let these people in because it's embarrassing to them. Why? Well, that's so weird. Their own president has a $15 million U.S. bounty on his noggin because he is Nicolás Maduro is a international narco-terrorist.
A $15 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. The announcement came as the U.S. Justice Department...
Well, let's get him. Where is he? Wait, I'm sorry. You need to squeak or I can't hear you. Sharm el-Sheikh, that you don't say, oh, he's at the climate summit. Why wouldn't he be? Giant petro-energy exporter like Venezuela would have their narco-terrorist president at Sharm el-Sheikh. If he's in Egypt, then all bets are off, bro. We're not going to go into a hostile, a non-permissive environment like Caracas and pull him out. He's got Iranian bodyguards with him in Caracas, but if he's in Sharm el-Sheikh, then let's go black bag him, bro. Oh, someone is getting between us and our $15 million. And were you going to be the wheelman, Greg?
Sure.
Will you stay in the Suburban while we get to the airport at Sharm el-Sheikh with our black bagged $15 million boy? That's worth, 10%. $1.5 million is on your way if you'll do that. Except, who's this guy shaking his hand at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh?
I know him.
I think he's an American. Oh, he's extending his hand. Oh, I bet he's going to grab Maduro's hand and handcuff him. Wow, that sure sounded like John Kerry, because it was John Kerry. John Kerry shaking the hand of Nicolás Maduro and not handcuffing him. This fugitive who's in Egypt right now, a U.S. ally. By the way, the Egyptians would be kind of embarrassed, but they wouldn't shed a tear if Delta Force grabbed Maduro there. But no, this really happened. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, that's quite a drop from $15 million. What? We invaded Panama for less, I think Noriega only had like a $5 million bounty. And I mean, I get inflation and everything, but, we sent 2 airborne divisions. Well, 1 air assault. But Rangers Airborne Air Assault Division, plus the guys that are already there, we overthrew Panama. Noriega. Panama is a functioning democracy now. That's so weird. And put him in jail up here, put him on a C-130. We took the perp walk photos with him with FBI and DEA. They made a point, by the way, of DEA people being in the photos. How did Maduro get off the hook? I don't get it. What did Maduro do that we lift a $15 million bounty on the ground in? So weird. And put him in jail up here, put him on a C-130. We took the perp walk photos with him with FBI and DEA. They made a point, by the way, of DEA people being in the photos. How did Maduro get off the hook? I don't get it. What did Maduro do that we lift a $15 million bounty, apply Title 42 only to Venezuelans. And that's Biden fulfilling an anti-Trump campaign pledge. Well, what did Maduro do? He's cranking up the exports of oil is why. Because the Biden administration scrambled so hard months ago to stave off what was going on at the pumps. And this is, by the way, the word that you're searching for is whorish. We went to a narco-terrorist who has Iranians on the ground in his country and said, please up your production of petroleum. And by the way, this is what a basket case Venezuela is. One of the largest producers and exporters of petroleum. They have one refinery in their entire country. One. Their retail outlet, Citgo, that's sold here in the U.S., it's all refined here. And so this guy who facilitates the import of fentanyl into Venezuela, where unmolested, it's mixed up and turned into real fentanyl, all the precursor poison ingredients that the Chinese are making, it's sent through Venezuela, through the southern border, if it doesn't go through B.C., up north. So that's part of many reasons that Nicolás Maduro was wanted with a $15 million bounty. But the Biden administration lifted it. Of course, you know this because the American media led with it a couple months ago when that happened. No, they didn't. But Joyce Karam, where's she from? Senior correspondent at that's right. She's from the National. She's at George Washington University. But so she caught this on a video. This is at the climate thing that Biden is flying off to today at Sharm el-Sheikh, which is at the very southern tip of it's the hemorrhoid on the Sinai Peninsula, and it's a world-class scuba diving resort. Ask any of the peacekeepers who went there. So anyway, the president's flying there today. I can only assume to make a citizen's arrest. No, when he makes it, because the attorney general is the highest law enforcement official in the land. But the president could do it too, and maybe pocket that bounty or have Hunter do it or something. But so Nicolás Maduro is at COP27 there in Sharm el-Sheikh. The president's flying out there today, and so this dude had a $15 million bounty on his head a couple months ago, and somehow because part of it is that going to crown that bounty or have Hunter do it or something. But so Nicolás Maduro is at COP27 there in Sharm el-Sheikh. The president's flying out there today. And so, this dude had a $15 million bounty on his head a couple months ago. And somehow, because part of it is that going to Crown Prince Bonesaw is somehow so much of an insult to American pride or whatever. He did it anyway. And then the Saudis go ahead and lower production to raise the price. This guy was part of that. So not only did he not play your game and export more petroleum so that you have to lower the price of gas artificially by dipping into the family savings in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, but you lifted a narco-traffic bounty on this dude. And so the state, and by the way, Kerry is, what is he, the climate change czar? Or whatever the hell he is?
For lack of a
something
term,
like that. It's a title like that. The State Department is trying to walk back the handshake. What he does is they yuck it up a little bit, and then Kerry shakes his finger at him, and then you know the thing where you hold out your left index finger and then you take your right index finger and you go shame and you go shaky, shame. And that means, you're a naughty boy, right? If you do it in traffic or it's almost a joke. I don't know where it comes from, but it means, no, I can't say mad at you. But he does that to him. As they're separating, he wags his finger at him. You narco-terrorist, don't you import any more fentanyl. And then he does that gesture to him. So anyway, I just retweeted it. If you're on the tweeter machine at Dark Secret Place, I just retweeted it. Then he walks away from this guy who had a $15 million bounty. So I just retweeted it. Then he walks away from this guy who had a $15 million bounty the DEA was told very quietly to lift it because he also has a bounty on petroleum. So there you are. There's your clarified, coherent foreign policy, everybody, explained in 9 minutes.
And you're right. The State Department spokesman, Ned Price, tried to downplay this encounter. Apparently, Maduro, the narco-terrorist, has a history of
shaking hands,
surprising world leaders in settings like this and going, hey, what's up? But the least Kerry could have done was refuse to shake the guy's hand. He knows who he is.
He knows damn well. And like if Kerry said, "Oh, I thought for a second it was Uday Hussein," I would believe him more. Or I thought it was Saddam's clone, one of those Saddam body doubles. State Department walked it back, saying it was, quote, unplanned and non-substantive, close quote. But he knows damn well who this was. By the way, Macron is shorter than Maduro. Former bus driver Maduro. And they, who knew? Macron speaks Spanish. Anyway, here's Macron, who lost out on a chance for $15 million. So that's many, many francs, my mon frère, mon ami. We'll be back in just a second. AM 770. Bryan Suits here at KTTH.
With an impressive lineup of cars, trucks, and SUVs, it's no wonder people are switching to Chevy year after year. Chevrolet, America's fastest-growing full-line brand. Based on retail segment share gains 2020. Visit Three-Way Chevrolet today.
Some Sunday KTTH, Bryan Suits here, and it's just to remind you all. Remember, it's time to get politics out of foreign policy, says Mr. Foreign Policy President as he was running 2.5 years ago. So just in case, remember that one time that Greg, that you were indicted for narco-terrorism? Indicted
just once,
and a 15 billion, million. That's million with an alien. Bounty was put on, because you understand the DEA doesn't like throw darts and go bounty. No, there's got to be an indictment.
Would you still shake my hand if that was the case?
Yeah, but then I go aha, and I do the
shame on
the
you.
Russian prisoner handcuff thing. No, oh, you mean that video? Yeah. So I tweeted that out of John Kerry going naughty, and all this.
Someone's been a bad boy,
And again, remember. Mohammed bin Salman, Trump sold American foreign policy, and he just sort of laughed off the bone saw thing, and that's just really, really bad. Meanwhile, several, thousand American troops are on the ground, defending Saudi Arabia because it is in our deep national interest. Meanwhile, other side of the hemisphere, Attorney General William Barr, who worked for the Trump administration, announced the indictment of a narco-terrorist, the so-called president of Venezuela, who was assisting China in importing fentanyl to the United States, because part of the deal was, well, I'll set up the distribution ring or the transport ring, but you got to take my cocaine with you because, you got to chase some fentanyl with some booger sugar once it gets to San Diego. And all that. I mean, he's in bed with China because China's not stupid. There's China over there. They're not stupid. They look at, well, who is in the same time zone as the United States who's evil AF? And they go, oh, we have our boy in Caracas, Nicolás Maduro. And in fact, he has an entire network. And he's in bed with the Cuban intelligence service, which has people all over South Florida, called the Jimenez. Let's just call them up. And what's in it for them? We'll tell them we'll buy some of their coke, but we'll allow them to distribute it. But what they get from us is our deep, deep appreciation, because we're going to poison the Americans. We're going to fund dams in one of the most energy-rich countries on earth. He wants hydroelectric because he's all about the environment and stuff, and he wants to meet Madonna. And I mean, it's gross. And by the way, this is because in finding one more thing against Trump, they decided to hang their hat on the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia knew and probably approved, probably specifically dictated how to kill Adnan or Jamal Khashoggi. Appreciation, because we're going to poison the Americans. We're going to fund dams in one of the most energy-rich countries on earth. He wants hydroelectric because he's all about the environment and stuff, and he wants to meet Madonna. And I mean, it's gross. And by the way, this is because in finding one more thing against Trump, they decided to hang their hat on the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia knew and probably approved, probably specifically dictated how to kill Adnan or Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul 4 years ago. Look, it all could have been done with a letter of censure and sending the ambassador back to Riyadh. Instead, you have this ridiculous display of John Kerry shaking Maduro's hand and not putting a handcuff on it. But we dropped the Biden administration is so backwards and so vengeful towards anything that Trump did. They dropped the indictment on this guy, apply Title 42 to his citizens that are fleeing his crap hole. So Haitians come in all day long. Nigerians come in all day long. Belgians and Finns come in all day long. Just walk across. They're at Eagle Pass. That's where it's most shallow. But Venezuelans fleeing failed socialism, they get turned around for Title 42 because of this pandemic that's going all over the place. So I am disgusted is what I tell you. You know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to read my grandpa's entire World War I diary. From Victoria to Belgium. Victoria, BC to Belgium. What do you think of that, Greg?
I think we should just read it live on the air. That sounds great.
That was the plan.
Oh, that was the plan.
And you know the significance of the date in the 11th month on the 11th day and the whole thing?
Right, when it ended.
And it was the 11th minute of the 11th hour, 11:11 a.m. on the 11th of November.
Did they plan that?
Yeah. No, everyone forgot to wind their clock 4 days before. Oh, look at that. Yeah, it was. This is what's crazy about the end of World War I. 80% of American casualties in World War I, and I want to say it was like 28,000. 80% happened in the final month and a half. Because even though it was known that, hey, an armistice is underway, and they're not going to keep it like the Kaiser. In fact, he's going to go to Holland. He's going to abdicate and the whole thing. And so there was just this. Instead of, let's just sit here in the old dugout and wait for November to roll around. The huge offensives, and that's where if I could have one wish, if I had a time machine to go back to one time, I would go back to my grandpa now, convince him I'm his grandson, tell him not to fear this recording machine. It's like a record, but in a tiny little thing. And I talk into it. I would interview my grandpa about that because he describes that. The Canadians were in that thing from early on. He and the 2nd Canadian Mounted Rifles from Victoria got there in 1915. And they were, and they would take breaks. It'd be like 2 weeks up, 3 weeks back. They weren't, in the trenches for 4 years, whatever. But he does describe the final month of the war. It was just this crazy different war where they were out of the trenches and the whole thing. And the unit that he was in, BC Horse, 2nd Canadian Mounted Rifle, at one point towards the end of the war, it was half Americans. It was half dudes from Everett and Bellingham and all that. And their names are not on any memorial anywhere here, but they are on memorials in Canada. But they had it up to here with this Kaiser by 1916, and they went up north, like in your favorite movie, Legends of the Fall, right?
Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, sure.
Yeah, and they go up to BC in the movie based on fact. But so anyway, it's pretty astounding that I knew my grandpa was in that war, and it seems like ancient history, but in reality, it's 104 years ago.
One of my favorite slogans to come out of that conflict was it was supposed to be the war to end all wars.
Well, it was.
And it makes me think...
If your encyclopedia ends in 1919...
read their history before they made that the motto?
Yeah, everyone wants to be the wiser, but why is everyone trying to keep it like the Kaiser? That's my favorite.
Oh, nice.
Bond drive thing. No, it was, you talk about this rush of idiotic naivete after that particular war, but that's also how Woodrow Wilson, gigantic defender of freedom and democracy, that's how he sold the war. It's the war to end all wars, and well, that ought to do it. Well, I'm just happy to be a part of that. Meanwhile, he pretty much suspended the First Amendment back here in the United States and the whole thing. So there's your Woodrow Wilson.
That's for tomorrow's show.
Yeah, that is. Then he hosted D.W. Griffith in a White House showing of Birth of a Nation, the most racist movie pretty much ever made. So there's that guy. Sorry to shoot your myths down, folks, but so anyway, it is interesting because it was Armistice Day. Also, how Woodrow Wilson, gigantic defender of freedom and democracy, that's how he sold the war. It's the war to end all wars, and well, that ought to do it. Well, I'm just happy to be a part of that. Meanwhile, he pretty much suspended the First Amendment back here in the United States and the whole thing. So there's your Woodrow Wilson.
That's for tomorrow's show.
Yeah, that is. Then he hosted D.W. Griffith in a White House showing of Birth of a Nation, the most racist movie pretty much ever made. So there's that guy. Sorry to shoot your myths down, folks, but so anyway, it is interesting because it was Armistice Day was the Germans had already signed a peace agreement with the Bolsheviks a year before. They're like, I don't know. But for France, England, Canada, the United States, who had just entered the war a year before, it was a common date. I don't know. Honestly, I'm going to tell you, I don't know that they observe it in Deutschland. I don't have a personal problem with them doing that. Them having a party for like VE Day, I might have a problem with. But I guess in Germany, it's start of the war day. It's September 1. That's a horrible joke. I take it back immediately without reservation. Back in a second, charges for the 14-year-old accused of murdering a Ingram High School student. That and more coming up. And just counting down the hours until the real identity of Stilly Doe. AM 770 KTTH.